Hey there, welcome back. And if you're new around here, welcome. My name's Reagan. I make content on YouTube here about stationery, journaling, planning, fountain pens, fountain pen inks, and that's pretty much it for now. But thanks for tuning in today. As you can see, there's a lot going on here. Just a little warning, this is probably going to be a little bit of a chaotic video because this situation has been really chaotic. And I'm going to walk you through what I have started, what I have tried, what has worked and what hasn't worked about my fountain pen and ink cataloging system. As you can see here, we have a lot happening. We have bound books, we have loose leaf binders, we have small notebooks all the way down to A6 size. I have a B5 size here. So let me clear everything, and I'm just going to work chronologically, I think, and I'll walk you through what I've tried. And this is really, this is kind of for me as well as you. Hopefully something in this video will give you an idea, or maybe you'll like something that I tried and want to try it yourself. But on the other hand, this is also for me to work through out loud what I have tried and what I liked and what I didn't like, so that I can really refine and, I don't want to say perfect, because I don't think I'm ever going to have a perfect system that I 100% love, and that's just how I am doing things forever and ever. Because I think as I evolve in this hobby, and as, you know, my tastes change, and as, you know, new ideas come to life, or for example, I just watched Julia Here's, Julia, her channel name is Julia Here. She shared with us her CAWS journal, CAWS, and it is an acronym for catalog and writing sample. Hang on, I don't think that's it. Let me take a look and I'll find it while I share with you. So what she does in this journal is, okay, CAWS.
Hey there.
Setting up a new inky notebook. Okay, I might have to listen to see what the acronym stands for. Anyway, not super relevant, but and I tried it out, and I'll show you what she created for herself for that journal. But she had a swatch of the ink, she had a writing sample of the ink in a fine nib and a medium nib, and I just think, like, we'll go through this because a lot of this has worked, but for some reason or another, I just end up and I'm not happy with it, and either it's not big enough, or it's not, the paper isn't right, or we'll go through all of that. But I'm gonna clear off and get these organized so that we can do this chronologically, and you guys are gonna help me refine my cataloging system here to at least a place where I can be semi-happy with it for now. So I'll be right back, and this won't look so chaotic in a moment. Okay, so this is where I started. And at this point in my fountain pen and fountain pen ink journey, we'll call it, I was pretty strictly taking inspiration from Karina Loves to Plan, from Krista David, and from Julia here. I started off consuming, well, I first heard about fountain pens from Helen from the Coffee Monsters Co. I was watching her videos and she got me into Hobonichi and she also piqued my interest about fountain pens. So, a little bit of inspiration is coming from her too, but more recently, I started off watching those three mainly those three creators. More recently, Grace from Wildly Imaginable, but this was initially my system. So we'll start here. This journal, which I have a second one, and I'm actually glad I haven't used it yet because I might end up needing another one, but in 2026, and I'm trying to remember if I don't think I had one of these for last year. I don't think I started one of these from last year. This is an A5 Yamazakura Hobonichi notebook. It is grid and it has Tomoe River paper in it. It's from the 2024 collection. I don't know if it is the 2024 paper or if this was like a second making. So I'm not sure if this is the bad paper or not. I've had some issues, but for the most part, I mean, I've become okay with it. So what this journal is for me is a chronological documentation of my inks and pens, and really this has become a journal for my YouTube content that I'm making. I started off with, and I'm pretty happy with how this is going. This is just chronological and had a little bit of a wish list happening. I started out listing out all my bottled inks, and let me make sure you can see. Yeah, you can see the whole thing. And as you can see, I started off skipping pages because it wasn't bleeding through that bad, but I'm glad that I was in the habit of skipping pages because as you can see, when we will flip through, the ink started to like really heavily ghost, and then some of them bleed through. So I did a spread with my bottles, a spread with my samples. I also included the cartridges, which eventually I wasn't using cartridges a lot. So I ended up and punctured all these cartridges and just stuck them. I ended up just sticking them all in a sample vial. And so I used like, I don't have it put together, but I used a syringe with one of these like needlepoint tips or blunt nose tip syringe. And I just sucked the ink out of the cartridge and consolidated it into an ink sample vial. And so I started out the year with all these cartridges, but eventually I just transferred them into sample vials. I also use these little tabs to indicate if I have a page where like I want to make a video of something, which I think is really good idea, but is kind of distracting, I feel like sometimes. So the next spread, and this is the first place where I started to list out all my fountain pens. So there is a little spot here for each of my fountain pens that I had at the time. And my idea was to do a little like swatch and list out the ink that I was putting in the pen and then give it like a rating system here. At first, I gave it the rating at the beginning of when I inked the pen, like before I had done any writing or anything. Then I quickly realized that I might change my mind about how I was feeling. So then I would do, like, over here you can see it kind of better. I stood for my rating for the ink, P stood for my rating for the pen, and C stood for my rating for the combination, so the ink and pen pairing together. And then I drew a little dash, and this was my initial decision or rating, and then this was after I had done some writing with it. So as you can see here, I was favoring some pens over the others, and I quickly realized I was going to run out of room because I was inking up some more than others, and some back here, like you can see, I hadn't even inked up, and I had left a couple pages, but I think with the amount of pens I have right now, I don't even think I would, or the amount of pens that I have acquired, and then some of these I have sold, and so I would just this would essentially be wasted space. So that part of this journal was kind of a dud. I also left room for each month I would do a little review. Karina Loves to Plan does this really well. She lists out how many pens she acquired, how many inks in samples or bottles she acquired, and then she has a starting number and an ending number. As you can see, I have not updated this in a couple months, but since then I have created a digital filing system, like a Google sheet for all my pens, all my inks. I have a page on there for all the nibs that I have, and then yeah, that's it. And so I have a digital file, and so that I don't have a spreadsheet where it calculates this for me, but I can always refer back to the spreadsheet to see how many pens did I buy in April, or how many inks did I purchase in April. And so that was, and again, I was just in the habit already of skipping pages, but that was what these pages were going to be for. I have the desire to make an ink swatching a video going over some ink swatching tools and techniques. I also have some that I've never tried before that I've seen other people try, and I really want to do that. So I was going to do that here, but honestly, I feel like I might need this other page too. So hopefully that video will be coming soon. But then I started to tab by month, and I would just stick the tab on. After January was over, I would stick the tab for February on the next page. So I started to document the inks that I was getting in, and my ink buying tendencies started to increase around January. As you can see here, I only started with 15 samples and 14 bottles, and let me just pull up my spreadsheet just for a good laugh. So right now, and this is bottles and samples, but I have 150, wait a minute. There's 2 in here that I don't. There's 2 that I need to log still. 165 altogether. So not 165 bottles or 165 samples. I think I'm probably around well, let me look. That's 40 times 4. So wait a minute. Oh yeah. Oh, wait a minute. I have my I have my bottles and my samples in sample vials. So for example, I have a bottle of Diamine Rosewood, but I have a little bit in a sample vial so that I can store it at my desk and have quick access to it. So that my what I just counted out of the samples that I have at my desk wouldn't make sense. But anyway, not super relevant. But I started to log and just do a chronological logging of inks that I got in and things that I was doing. So here is my first Goulet Pens ink haul. I was trying to do currently inked as well because I saw a lot of people on YouTube doing that, and I can't commit to the same ink and the same pens for a whole month. And I quickly realized that because I would write for a little bit and then I'd be like, oh, I want to try another ink, because I had, you know, at that point I felt like I had so many inks, and I did, and I still do. So I just like to just ink up like 8 or 10 or 12 pens and just commit to only those pens and inks for the whole month was just too much of a commitment for me, I feel like. So I quickly halted on the currently inked, but that was in there. And look, like I have inked up, I think all the pens that I had at this point, I had inked up. And then, you know, I was like, well, wait, I want to try this ink. So anyway, so then we have, and I loved how I did this. This was with Speedball B. I think it was a size 0. Yeah. Nib. And I just did like big swatches and then wrote the names of the inks. So I thought that was a really fun way to swatch those. I was doing some ink mixing at the top of the year. I quickly realized that I was just doing too much. I was trying to use up, I didn't want to put the ink from my pen back into some of my bottles, and I hadn't figured out that I was going to put my bottles into sample vials yet. So I didn't want to waste the ink that was left in my cartridge or cartridge converter. And I didn't want to put it back in the bottle because I didn't want to risk contaminating the bottle. So I thought, why don't I just start mixing? And then, you know, I was running out of room. And so then I started to combine like this one and this one combined to make this one, and then and then eventually I just made 2, and then I was like, okay, these, and it was all different brands of ink. It was a mess. So that has also ceased since. This I thought was really fun too, to do like the little swatches. I think I did this with my Kakamori stainless steel nib, but then I did like swatches across the whole page. I thought this just looks so cool. And most of this is just new ink, like ink that I had purchased. I was planning on doing little like writing samples here in the dead space, but I didn't do it. I got a few new pens on kind of around the same couple days, so I just did one spread here. And at this point too, like I wasn't doing double page spreads consistently, but then, you know, I can see through that pretty easily, and so I didn't want to just like plop this over here. I got my first SD. That was really exciting because I feel like SDs are so popular, and at that point that was like a really expensive price point for me for a pen. So when I was able to get that, I was really excited. I did do a little January in review summary, wrote a little bit about how I was using my pens and whatnot, and my ordering habits. I did go a little wild with my online ordering, but I am thoroughly enjoying everything thus far. I did a little like what I inked at the end of the month, or what I had inked at the end of the month. Then I started to realize like I wanted my inks color categorized. I will show you this now because I had this blank. I hadn't used it. It was just completely blank, a 2024 A6 Hone. So from Hobonichi. So you had the, I was categorizing each color in a month. So like January was red, February was orange, March yellow. As you can see, April was loaded up real quick. Blue, purple, pinks. And then like I had over 2 whole months of browns, which just stopped because I was running out of room and it wasn't working the way I had thought it would. So then I had all my shimmers together. I quickly realized that wasn't gonna be enough space either. Then in the monthlies, I was gonna do, so I had listed here, I had on the first, like on the page, on the space for January 1st, I had the swatch, and then underneath I wrote the name, because when you go in here, I did not want to put anything on the back side of the page because some of these did end up bleeding through. And so I would only do every other date. So like January 1st, January 3rd, January 5th. So I skipped a line and did a swatch and then wrote the name. And then in the monthly section, I did the same thing. So on January 1st, I put Diamine Poinsettia. And then on January 3rd, I had Bah Humbug, and then on January 5th, I had Writer's Blood. And then when you went into the daily pages, I had on January 1st, Diamine Poinsettia. January 3rd, Bah Humbug. Diamine Writer's Blood on the 5th. And then I quickly realized too here that I couldn't see what this was going to look like in a pen. The swatches are nice, but like this wasn't enough for me to see what this was going to look like in a pen. And then you can see on the back here that this was just not, and I'm glad I realized early on that they potentially would bleed through. But then, you know, in April for my greens, I very quickly ran out of room here because greens and browns are just inks that I really gravitate towards. But again, like I didn't leave enough room for writing samples, and so I couldn't tell what these inks were going to look like. So this was really exciting and fun at first, but I quickly realized this wasn't going to be sustainable when my ink collection grew. So there's the first attempt. The second attempt, which I think I started a little bit before I swatched. So right here, I swatched all of my inks by color. So this is all my brown inks. These were all my greens at the time. And then I had red, orange, yellow, blue, purple, and pink together, and gray. And I didn't, at that point, I think all my blacks were still in cartridge, so I didn't do a black. But in this notebook, this is just an A6 Sterling ink grid notebook. So I wanted to do swatches, like smaller swatches, and a little bit of a writing sample. So I started to write in Bible verses with each ink. And again, I skipped pages because I didn't want them to bleed through. But this was going to be a catalog of my inks in chronological order. And at the front, I left a couple pages for a table of contents. And then here, I put the page number, and I did a little dot. I messed up here, but I did a little dot of the ink with, again, my Speedball B-nib. And then I did the date I purchased the ink, and then I wrote the name and brand over here. So like on the 29th, I bought all 3 of these. And then you go down the page, but I was having a hard time seeing what the ink colors truly looked like in this small of a swatch. So I couldn't just go through and easily pick out. And so I was having to like, flip through all of these pages just to find an ink. And with this bound book, I also had a hard time comparing. So like, let's say I wanted to compare, Lamy Brown to, I just saw Cafe Crema. Yeah. Let's say I wanted to compare Cafe Crema to Lamy Brown. I would have to, oops. Oh no. Okay, I'm so sorry. I don't know where that left off, but I quickly realized that, like, if I did want to compare an ink so let's say I wanted to compare Cafe Crema to Lamy Brown, I would have to switch back and forth. And so this is when I started to realize, like, a bound book was not going to work for me either with what I wanted it to do. At this point too, I had already moved into this book as well, and this was going to just be a catalog of my inks and writing samples. So I'll show you, we'll go from the daily pages of this hone back into the, like, weekly, then monthly, then quarterly. So I wrote the name of the ink up here, and as you can see, I don't have them all done yet, but I have the name of the ink up here. I have how much of it I have. So this is obviously a sample, 5 milliliters. And then I was also going to put a wetness scale to show how wet the ink was versus dry. I've only gotten like maybe a dozen of these done. And what I was doing was transcribing. I have a Bible study book. I was transcribing this, and then at the end of each day, it gives you prompts to answer. And so I was doing I was transcribing the actual Bible study, and then when I got to the end of the day, I would do the reflection questions and then write them out in here. And I wanted to do a little swatch and then a little, like, figure 8 and line widths with my Kakamori nib. So this was going well, but I fell off super early on. But also this is something that I can just pick back up with and restart once, like, whenever I want. And these inks were also in chronological order. So my earlier purchased inks are back here in January, and then my most recent inks are up here in April and in May. So that's what the daily pages were going to look like. Up here in the weekly pages, there were Bible verses referenced in the Bible study. And so my idea was to write out the Bible verses that were referenced in the corresponding day. So, like, this is probably, like, these first 3 days are the Bible verses that were referenced in day 1 of the Bible study, which day 1 lasted from January 1st all the way through to January 6th. So actually, probably these first 6 days are the Bible verses that were referenced in day 1, and then here would start day 2. And I was just going to write, what week we were on up here. But I mean, I haven't gotten past week 1 yet, but this is what that was going to look like. And then here in the monthly pages, I was going to do a little sample, write the ink name, and then this rating was going to be for the ink on a scale of 1 to 10. And then I was using the same pen for multiple days so that I could just clean the pen out real quick, re-ink it, and then continue on. And so, like, for days 1 through 7, I was using the Quaco Sport in Bordeaux extra fine. So this rating was going to be for my pen. And then, as you can see, all these inks I just cleaned out and re-inked with the next one. And so this was kind of going okay too, but I started to see people's rating their pen and ink pairings during their currently inked. And so I kind of didn't want to do this rating system anymore, but I also was thinking, like, this is going to be really hard to reference back to when I want to see, like, what inks I have put in what pens or whatnot. So I'm still going to continue to write in the ratings of the ink and the ratings of the pen, but this also does not give me a rating of what the pen and the ink together were. So that was another thing that I was kind of missing in this system. And then here in these like quarterly pages, I was just going to write the Bible study that I was working on, because I figured if I got through a whole year, I probably would have, like, the Bible study would be over. And so I might need to put another one in here as well. But I was just going to write the ink brand and name here. And then down here, I was going to write what pen I was using with that ink and pen, with that ink. And then I also thought, like, so for days 7 to 1, I was using a Kaweco. Here I was using a Twisby Eco. Here I was using a Kakuno. I don't know if I'll continue to do that, but I do really like the idea of like having this and being able to reference back to it to see these writing samples, because I do think it's a good representation of like what the ink looks like in a pen. But this definitely isn't something that I'm in a hurry to finish. This is just like an ongoing project, I feel like, for me. So there is that, and I'm happy with that, but I wasn't satisfied with this being the only way I was ranking or rating or displaying my inks and pens and combos. So then we get back here, and I made a little list of things I wanted to note for each ink. And it might be hard to see because it's such a light ink, but I made a list of what I wanted to note for each ink and what I wanted to note for each pen, because I really wanted to narrow down, okay, what do I need from this ink journal and pen journal, and what do I want? So for the ink, I wanted to note down what the brand was, what the series or collection was, what the color or name of the ink was. I wanted a swatch. I wanted a writing sample. I have here extra fine nib, medium nib, and Kakamori nib, but I think I'm going to narrow that down to just a fine and a medium nib. I have these, I bought the Sailor Hokoro dip pen, and I have a fine nib and a medium nib for the pen, and so I thought having a fine and medium writing sample, or a writing sample using a fine and using a medium nib would be enough of a difference to show. And Julia does that in her most recent video. She does a writing sample with a fine nib and a medium nib, and there's enough variation to see that it's going to look different. The ink is going to look different the more broad you go. But I also don't want to make too much work for myself where I'm going to do an extra fine nib and a fine and a medium and a broad and a stub. Like, that's just too much. So then I was going to write what nib and pen should I use. I quickly realized, like, that's the whole fun of this whole hobby for me, is like experimenting with different pen and ink combos and different nib and ink combos. So that that was kind of like an afterthought that I realized. The dry and wet scale writing was, again, what I was going to do in here. And you can kind of see, like, I don't know if you can see, but I had nibs written right here, and I was going to write, okay, this would be best in a fine nib, or this would be best in a stub nib. But then I quickly, like, that was, again, this whole thing. Like, I don't really want to do that. And then I also wanted a place to put some notes. So, like, for example, if I did an ink swap, I want to remember who I got that ink from. And then same thing for the pen. I had all these things written down that I wanted to note for each pen that I have. But then this, I quickly realized, like, it's going to matter a lot what you put in the pen. on how it's going to look like and how it's going to write and how it's going to feel. So this kind of like got pushed to the wayside as well. Then we move on to February. I got some more inks. Again, more inks. I don't know. I think I did these swatches so large because I only had 4, and I started to realize that I just wanted like a blank 2-page spread in between each 2-page spread. I did another currently inked, but again, these pens were uninked, or like the inks were changed pretty soon after I wrote this, actually. I think it was Julia do an ink exploration. I'm gonna move this. This is just blank and ready for when I run out of pages. Did a little ink exploration with her pen. And so I did one for my Esterbrook SD, and I picked out all these inks, and, you know, now can see like, okay, what do I want to try to like color match with? I feel like sepia is the best match that I've found so far for the honeycomb, but I also liked Linen Toolbar Ant Tiger. That's why I kind of did a little heart right here. But this was really fun to do as well, was just do a little ink exploration. I did get a couple more nibs and another niblet. And then I also got the TWSBI Diamond 580 ALR and Affogato here. So I did a little spread there. But again, I only did 1 page. And so then this is wasted and this is... Anyway, then we get into March. I got some more inks. And I think this is pretty much when I tried one more time for a currently inked. And I didn't write March currently inked. I just wrote currently inked. But I did some swatches as well. But I think this, from here on out, this is pretty much just inks that I got. I was going to try to do writing samples in here. So I had De Atramentis Document Sepia Brown in my Esterbrook SC and Scribe Nib. And so I was just transcribing the Bible. And then I had Oyster Hour in an SD with a needlepoint nib. But then I realized that if I was going to do that for more pens and inks and nibs, that I was going to run out of room in this book. So I thought, I'm not going to do that. But that gave me the idea to transcribe the whole Bible, which obviously is a very long-term goal. But I got a separate B5 notebook from Sterling Ink, and I have actually started. And you can see this is Koji paper, I think they call it. It's a little more cream. But I ended up and started this the other day, and I'm really happy with my plan for it. So I started with chapter 1. I'm going to do like a Genesis kind of title page over here and maybe do like a summary of the book and the character, or not the characters, but the people in the book, and then, you know, just start transcribing. And my idea was to pick a color, a consistent ink color for each chapter to represent like what that chapter is about. So like the first, or each book of the Bible. So like Genesis is about the beginning of the world and, you know, like new beginnings. And so I Googled I literally typed into Google beginning as a color, and green came up. So I was like, you know what? Which of my greens looks like a new, fresh, like, you know, color? And so I ended up going with Linen Toolbar Dried Guava, and that's what this is. And I have 2 pens inked up for this. I did my Leonardo Momento Zero Grande 2.0 in a fine nib for the like titles. And then I have this Nagasawa Prosk in a fine nib for like the body of the writing. And I have the same ink inked up And so that kind of is where this morphed into, is my transcribing of the Bible. So that's something that I'm really excited about too. And it's, again, like, it's another long-term project that I can just pick up and like pick up where I left off, essentially. So then I just started to do some doodles. But I didn't, this was one where I had oyster hour in there, but then I didn't clean the pen out and I just added motor oil. I ran out of ink and I didn't clean it out before I inked it back up. So you can kind of see it morph from oyster hour into motor oil down here. But I have another notebook and I got this idea from, I think it was, so I saw it on Grace's channel from Wildly Imaginable, but she got the idea, I believe, from Simone on YouTube. This didn't last very long, but I wanted a record. I thought I wanted a record of all the inks I was putting in all my pens. And so she had this kind of set up similar to this, with the date that you ink it, the date you unink it, the pen and the ink, and it didn't last. So then I thought, why don't I just like use this as kind of like a scratch notebook? And the reason why I wanted to do that was because, sorry, I'm grabbing something off to the side here, was because this B6 notebook from Sterling Ink fits so perfectly in this front pocket of my pen case from Esterbrook. And so I thought, if I just need to like start a pen, or if I just need to doodle, or like just get some doodles out or what, like I did this little doodle here, and you know, it's just scratch, like it's just whatever notebook. Like I don't have to be neat. I can be messy. I can do like this is a list of pens that I have inked right now, but it's not like I didn't want to try to make, I feel like currently inked is too much pressure for me. And so I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to like have a place where I could just come and be messy and not have to like worry about what I was putting in here. So this is kind of what this notebook turned into, which I actually really enjoy, just having somewhere to come that, like, I didn't have a plan for the notebook. It's just somewhere that I can scribble, essentially. So that kind of is where that notebook came from. Then I did an ink swap, and so I did a little spread with the inks that we swapped. This was a spread for the State of My Pen Collection video, and some of my pens had ink, so I just wrote the pen name in the ink. Then I did a State of My Bottled Ink Collection, so that's what this is. And then I got a new pen, and this was really exciting because this was like a pretty high price point for me at the time as well. I first inked it up with Yamaguri from Pilot, and then I did like 1 month later, Do I Still Love It? And I had it inked with Coastal Village. I got it off of Mercari, and the lady that I bought it from, she wrote me this cute note, so I just posted that in there. This is where I started to see like, and I don't know if I just used too much ink on these next few pages, but these just, oh my gosh. And I have heard that Birmingham Pen Company inks don't fare too well on Tomoe River paper. But this was my ink swap with Nikki, and I did, and she gave me all, she has a huge collection of Birmingham Pen Company's inks, and so I just picked out all Birmingham Pen Company. But as you can see, like, yikes. And I thought it was just Birmingham Pen Company, but I had an ink haul from Gold Spot, and I feel like there is a lot. I feel like I put a lot of ink down for these swatches, but as you can see, like this is Diamine, and this was even bleeding through, and you know, J.R. Bond and Lamy, you know, all of these bled through. And then I placed an an order with Nagasawa, and so I did a spread about that. And I also thought, like, I got an ink and a pen, and I thought I could come back like I did here. I could come back and just write my dang it. Oh my gosh. I went on this whole spiel about whether my phone was plugged in and what and I don't know if it was recording. So anyway, I did an ink swap with Nikki. These did not fare well on this paper. I mean, they look okay, like they look fine in the swatching and the writing, but this is where we really start to see some bleed through. And I don't know if I put too much ink down for these swatches, because it's very possible that I did. I mean, you can see there's like very deep shading parts, you know, but even these Diamine and J.R. Bond inks did not fare well. I wanted to leave an extra page here because I wanted to, like, I wrote this when I got it, and then I wrote this a month later, and so I kind of wanted to do the same thing with this Nagasawa pen that I got. And then here I have occult pens. I didn't do a video on this because most of these colors I already have, and I don't know what happened here, if it was like oils from my hand that made this look all splotchy. And then under here I ended up, at first I had just taped the corners right here and was gonna like leave it open so it could flap open, but I decided to I got these Waringal glitter potion additives, and I wanted to swatch them to see what colors they were. I put so much down, and like it didn't calculate in my brain that it was literally just going to be shimmer, and so it gets all over the place. So at first I just had like this so that it could fly open, but now I have taped the other side down too, because it is just so messy. I learned my lesson the hard way with that one. But I didn't do a video on this because the only new inks that I hadn't tried before were Golden Brown, Salamander, and Sepia. And then obviously the healing or the glitter potions. But and I kind of wanted to try out, like, I've seen Laura Jean, I think is her name, on Instagram, and she does these swatches, and she just goes like, she just does it over a couple of lines, and she just does this with her Speedball Bee nib, and I think it looks so cute. And so I tried to do it here. It kind of got a little messy, but then I did I don't remember if I filmed this or not. It's possible that I did, but I wanted to put all of my bottled inks in one page or in one place again, because I did, I got another request to do an ink swap, and I wanted to just be able to send pictures of all my bottled inks for them to choose from. And so I did, these are alphabetical, and it's this page and this page are all my bottled inks. But then I got more inks and so I did, this I think is already, well, I'm trying to upload it right now, but I did another Van Ness and Endless pens. And then I don't think I'm going to post the video that I recorded, but a while back I shared that I had found Goose Poupon on Mercari. Just randomly opened Mercari and saw a bottle of Goose Poupon from Ferris Wheel Press, and within like 3 minutes it had already been purchased and bought. I got on Mercari a couple weeks ago and I found another bottle of Goose Poupon. And tell me why that I just instinctively, like impulsively, put it in my cart, and I bought it again. Within like 2 or 3 minutes, it was bought. And after I purchased it, I was like, Reagan, you already have a bottle of Goose Poupon. You're not going to go through it. You're not going to use it all of it. There's no way. Why did you buy another one? You could have left that for somebody else to get and to enjoy. I don't know why I did that, but I was on my like YouTube page at the like last week, and I saw that I had over 100. I think it was 103 when I checked. I had over 100 subscribers to my channel, which is amazing, incredible, like wow. And so I thought about a way to give back to all of you that are subscribed and that have supported me thus far in this short little journey. And so I thought I would gather some things to do a giveaway with. And I thought this could be one thing that I put in the giveaway is the second bottle of Goose Poupon. So I did. And the thought crossed my mind that someone could have emptied the bottle out and put something else in the bottle and sold it as Goose Poupon. I don't know why I thought somebody would do that, because I don't think anybody in the fountain pen community would do that, because every single person that I have communicated with and have chatted with or have just seen post videos and stuff, I know they would never do that. But my brain sometimes just is so wild. And so I thought, let me swatch the first bottle and the second bottle. And so that's what I did here. And that's the last of it. I don't have anything for May yet, but that is how this book has progressed. And I'm really happy with how it's going. I think it's going to be fun to look back through at the end of the year and see, you know, everything that I have in here. So in the midst of that, I realized that, you know, the way I was cataloging my inks in here and here wasn't going to work for how I wanted it to work. So I realized that some people were putting their ink swatches in a binder. So I have some binder sheets, some loose leaf sheets, and I found these on Me Plus. I wasn't ready to pull the trigger on a really expensive leather binder because I didn't know if I was going to like this system or not. So this was like $9. It's just I have like some savings envelopes in here and stuff, but it's just a plastic binder with rings. And so I started off with that, with this idea, and this is kind of held for me for the last few months, but I had tabs for each color, and then in here I had, you know, like just a couple of lines for a swatch for the name of the ink, and then a little like figure 8, so I could see it in writing and I could also see it in a swatch. And then as you can see, it's not in a binder, so I'm not using this system anymore in this form because I wanted, like, these pages feel too small. The same way the weeks feels too thin for me, like this just doesn't feel like enough room. So, you know, you can see I started off this way and I really liked it. And I got the idea from Julia here because she sells, pre-made pages that you can fill out that are essentially like set up like this. Then we get into the greens, and I also tried to do this, like I have multiple pages in the greens because I tried to group them by color so that I could see them next to each other. But then I thought, like, you know, I don't know, I can't remember where my brain went from there, but after I got this done, I realized, like, this is just not enough. I'm just not a small notebook kind of girly. I do think it's cute for like something like this where you're just flipping through, but for something that I'm going to use regularly, and here you can see, like, you know, I've gotten I've got multiple pages in here of inks that look similar. Like these are the darker ones. These are kind of more red. These are more light brown. But again, it just was too small. I'm not a personal size girly. I'm an A5 girly for sure. Then I thought this was what I was going to do for all of these inks. I was going to make a full page, and I was going to write the name of the ink, have a big swatch up here. And this is just paper from an old Sterling ink notebook. It's Tomoe River paper that I just chopped up. You can see a little page number at the bottom. And then I hole punched because I didn't want to use brand new paper if I wasn't going to like this. And I'm glad I didn't, because I ended up just scrapping this. And this just sits clipped in my in my closet. But I was going to write a little description of what the brand described the ink as, and kind of some notes about that particular ink. And I did a couple, but again, like you can kind of see on this paper, the swatches just don't look, the swatches don't look that great. And then you can kind of see some feathering up here where there's a lot of ink laid down. So the paper that I was using also just was not working that great. And then like you can see a lot of shimmer in the writing up here, but then it's like really inconsistent. And then up here you can see where all the pools of ink dried, because that's where all the shimmer kind of sank to. So that was my first idea. I also was going to do like pip sheets in here, is what Grace calls them, pen and ink pairings. And I was going to do that again in the bigger binder that I'm about to show you, but I'm still stuck. I still think there's something missing about what I have tried in the bigger size, in the A5 size. I was also going to do a little nibventory. Julia does that because I had gotten myself some custom grinds from Esterbrook. And so I wanted to note that as well, because those are swappable. And so I started to swap nibs between all my Esterbrook pens. And so I wanted to keep track of like everything that I had, so that I didn't have to like go and actually look at the pen. And then back here, I was just doing a little, I had a little template of all the pages, different pages that I had in here. But again, this didn't last very long because I realized that this size was just not it for me. So from here, we moved into an A5 plastic binder from Me Plus. And I have since realized that you can get these on Amazon as well, and they come a lot faster. But this just has, I was also having trouble finding tabs or dividers that worked, because I had to double punch them. Like, this is how they came, but there's too much page here still. So I had to double punch all of these dividers, which I was not thrilled about either. That was another one of my gripes that I had to figure out how to work through. So I have a lot of pages that I will go through to show you. I started this is a B5 notebook from Sterling Ink. I started this with the idea that I would write down the pen up here, and then every time I re-inked the pen with something different, I would do a little sample, write the nib size, write the ink, and then do a little sample writing. So I picked a Bible verse. And then, I skipped a page so that I could have front and back two pages for each pen. I had a little table of contents here. As you can see, I've sold a lot of pens. So I didn't even put these in here because I had made this notebook after I sold all these. But let's go to a page that 19. So I started with this Kaweco Art Sport. I ended up selling it. So what I had thought I would do was just put a new pen on this page. And I like this, but I always forget to come here when I ink a pen back up. And some of these I don't ink up as often as others. Like you can see my niblet, I was inking up a lot. I ended up selling it. And then, you know, like I don't re-ink this one very often because I don't have a converter for it. It's just a cartridge. And then like my Esterbrook SD and Honeycomb, I was inking up all the time. But then some of these, like there are some that are back here. Like I haven't inked up my Macchiato Kaweco Sport in a while. So these are just blank. And so there's really just like a lot of unused space in here. And I was just forgetting to come to it. So because the idea was I want a page where I can see all the inks that I've ever tried. Let me go to a fuller page. All the inks I've ever tried for that particular pen. And it does look cool, like when it's all completely filled out, but I just always forget to come here and put in the inks. And then another idea I had was like, I'll put a little dot if I like the combo. So like, I was not happy with Cafe Crema in the needlepoint, so I didn't put a dot. But then I put a dot next to the London Toolbar Coastal Village with the scribe nib because that was really comfortable to write with. So I don't know if I'm going to continue this or not, but I also, you know, I think my pen and ink pairings, like I saw everybody doing their ratings and they had their rating systems, and that's just too much for me, I think, is the conclusion I came to. And so I thought this would work out really well, but it just is one more thing that I have to fill out when I ink up a pen that I'm forgetting to do. So let me walk you through all of this. These are the pages, and this was like I was almost happy with all of this. So let's start here. I made tabs and I put little stickers from the Coffee Monster Co. denoting what color is in each tab. So we start with red, and I used these, the chart grid pages from Plotter, and I would do a swatch and then I would do a little scribble with this Iro Sushi dip pen, and then just I have this in Pilot Friction pen written so that I could erase it and correct it if I needed to. But this was, I felt like I was just flipping back and forth too much. And you can see, like, so I don't have very much in the orange. I don't have a lot in the yellow. This probably shouldn't even be in the yellow. But then, like, in the green, I just have too many pages where I kind of, what I really wanted to see was a page like this. I wanted to see a page like this with all of my colors, or maybe have like 2 pages like this, or 2 spreads or something. Like, I didn't want to have to flip back and forth so many times between all these pages to try to find a color that I'm looking for. Another thing that I wanted to do in here was sort by brand. So if I knew what color I was looking for, I didn't have to go through all of these pages in my color categories. I would just go to the brand. So I have Birmingham Pen Company, and they're all alphabetically or organized alphabetically. That's what I had these clear tabs for, was to put like the letters of the alphabet. But these were so bulky and I wasn't able to fit everything in these 20 millimeter rings. So I ended up and filled out a page, you know, like pages for each brand. But the more I was putting in this binder, the more stuffed it got, and I couldn't even use it because there was just too much in it. Because what I was also doing was doing a whole page for each ink. And this was what was really stuffing up my binder. And my idea, let me find a page where I have done it. My idea was to do the name up here, a little swatch, and like, you know, some of them are swatched in different ways. And then I would do a little, I would just note here what pen I put it in and if I liked it or not. I do like this because I can see the ink in different pens. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find one where I have it, where I have done 2 pens. Here we go. So here is London Toolbar Sesame Oil in a journaler nib, and here it is in a fine nib. And I do like that I can see the difference between the two. But I mean, a majority of my inks I haven't even inked up yet because I just have so many inks. And I just keep buying inks, and so I have so many that I have never put in a pen. So this was also taking up a lot of room. So what I thought I would do is, at this point, I decided I like the binder system. I like how you can move things around and take things out and put things back. I saw a video, Krista David had referenced a video from Seaweed Kisses on YouTube, and she made her own trifold leather cover from some leather that she had purchased from a merchant online. So I went online and I purchased some leather, and what I also purchased were, where are they? Were some binder rings. And I thought I could just make my own little, well, not little, I thought I could make my own plotter or Me Plus binder, because these leather pieces, they come in a slab, and really all I had to do was attach the binder rings. I ended up and have made 2 binders, which this one I really goofed up and I put the holes in the wrong spot. But this one actually turned out really good, and I'm really happy with it. And I did the holes right, and I purchased, I think these are 30 millimeter rings. So super large rings to fit, you know, a bunch of papers. These rings still do not accommodate for my category, my color categories, my brand categories, and a single page per ink bottle or ink that I have. So then I stumbled upon Julia's video yesterday, a couple days ago, her CAWS video, CAWS, describing how she would organize her inks, or she has this binder where she wants to compare her inks. So I did a little sample on the top half with oxblood, and I'll try to put a screenshot of the printout that she made for herself for her binder, because I really like that idea, and maybe even splitting it into thirds. I was just doing whatever down here, but I really like the idea of having like a couple on each page. And then, so you've got the name, and she has like a couple boxes of, does it shimmer? Does it shade? Does it sheen? You know, and then she has a little area that you can write notes about the ink. A big swatch, and then she has like a small box down here where she did line widths. And then she has a writing sample with a fine nib and a writing sample with a medium nib, which I use the Sailor Hokoro dip pens for these. And then she suggested that on the back you could write if you inked it up in a pen and what pen you inked it up in. So essentially, I have a place for what I was using this notebook for. I have a place for here that is a little more condensed, and it is by ink and not by pen. So I thought, let me try to do that, and then I can keep, you know, because this doesn't take up very much space in this. This is my by color and by brand sortings. This doesn't take up very much space. Then if I can condense all of these inks down to like a third or a quarter, then I could also fit this in to the binder as well. And then I could also put pip sheets in here, which is what I was going to do here. And I will put a screenshot of the pip sheets that Grace uses from Wildly Imaginable here, because that is what I was thinking of doing in here, to have a page dedicated to the pens that I have put each ink into, categorized by the ink, and then also have a page for the pen and what inks I have put in that pen. So I can have the categorization or the culmination of all the inks that have ever been put in this certain pen on one page. And then I can have on another page all the pens that I have put that certain ink in. And it's all in one binder. It's all in one place. It's all safe and cozy in this beautiful leather binder that I have made myself, which is even more satisfying. The thing that I have to do is do it. So all of that to say, that is my plan for my ink and pen catalog binder. I am thinking that I'm going to take you on this journey with me, and we're going to I'm going to record when I sit down to swatch all my red inks, when I sit down to swatch all my diamine inks, when I sit down to swatch all of my green inks. And it's just going to be a bunch of different videos where I sit down with you and we tackle this project together. So I'm really excited. I am terribly sorry that this video was so long, walking you through all of this, but if you stayed till the end, or even if you only made it halfway through, I'm so grateful that you were here with me while I talked this all out and got it out of my head. I feel like when you get things out of your head, somehow it just clarifies things for me at least. And so I'm really excited about tackling this new project with you, and hopefully you were able to get some inspiration or some ideas for how you catalog your pen and inks. And if you don't do that, maybe now you want to, and maybe you'll come on this journey with me together, and we can do it together. I forgot to show you one last thing, and it's just this, it's another cute little A6. And I wanted to have a chronological list of all of the inks that I have ever acquired. And I was running out of space here. So what I decided to do was do 3 per page with a swatch and the name. I also had a little writing sample by writing the name, and I did 3 per page, and I did double-sided because I thought like this swatch is going to have nothing on the back side. And I don't have a table of contents. I don't have an index or whatever, but I thought I could just do a little swatch here. These are all of the inks that I have ever tried and that I currently have. And so I just used 2 boxes. I did a little scribble with my Iro Utsushi pen with the ink. And I think this just looks so cool. And once it's very messy down here, but once we get to the bottom to see all of my inks together, I just think that's going to be so cool. And here I have like a chronological documentation essentially of all of the inks that I have ever gotten, that I've bought, that I've gotten in ink swaps, that I've gotten samples of and used up, that I've gotten samples of and then gotten bottles. So I just thought this was another fun little project that I'm currently caught up on, actually, but just another way to catalog my inks that in a chronological way so that I can see from the start of my journey to current how my tastes have evolved and grown and whatnot. And I do have a lot of pages left, so there's plenty of room. So with that, I'm going to end it here. Thank you again for joining me. I can't wait to swatch all my inks and to eventually show you the finished product of my ink and pen journal in this binder that I made for myself. So be on the lookout for more videos coming. I would love to hear how you catalog and categorize and document all of your inks and pens and your journey with all of that. So if you would like to share that with me in the comments, I would love to know how you're doing all your stuff and how you've organized all this with all of your inks and whatnot. But if you are excited about seeing this process, I'd love it if you would subscribe, and then you can know when all these videos come out. And then at the end, you know, we'll have a video of me flipping through everything when it's complete and and all done. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.